In the shadowy history of science, not every breakthrough was made in a lab. Some were made in kitchens, in living rooms, on unsuspecting people who never agreed to be part of the experiment. And sometimes, those people paid the ultimate price. This is one of those stories. A case of trust betrayed, lives endangered, and justice still pending. In the city of Coventry, a group of 21 South Asian women were approached with what seemed like a simple request: eat a freshly made chapati each day, provided by local health workers to help monitor and improve iron levels in their blood. Many of these women had recently moved to the UK. They didn't speak fluent English. They trusted the system. They trusted their doctors. Some had been referred to the study by their local GP, a well-known community figure. They were told it was a nutritional program meant to help them, and they believed it. What they weren't told was that those chapatis were dosed with radioactive iron isotopes, specifically iron-59. The goal? To see how well the immigrant body absorbed iron. The women weren't sick, they were just convenient test subjects. No proper informed consent, no detailed explanation of the risks. Many couldn't even read the forms they were given. What they thought was healthcare was actually a secret medical experiment, one now considered unethical by today's standards. The justification? Officials said they were trying to help, that anemia was common in South Asian women, and this research would lead to better treatments. Years passed. Many of the women never knew. Some began experiencing fatigue and health issues, never linking it back to that harmless visit to the clinic. Some passed away, never learning the truth. It wasn't until the late 1990s that documents from the Medical Research Council were exposed by journalists. What they found was damning. Internal memos acknowledging the women hadn't understood what they were agreeing to. Handwritten notes indicating the tests were done because immigrant communities were easier to work with. There was no translation, no proper follow-up, no accountability. The public backlash was swift, but the apology came slow. It took decades before government officials acknowledged that what happened was wrong, but the damage was already done. In early 2025, human rights groups reignited pressure on the UK government to formally compensate the surviving families of the women used in the radioactive iron experiments of the 1960s. Many of these women were young mothers, recent immigrants, and non-English speakers, vulnerable and intentionally targeted because of it. They were prisoners, orphans, soldiers, and they never knew they were being used as test subjects. In 1946, American public health officials launched a secret medical experiment in Guatemala that would remain hidden for more than 60 years. Led by Dr. John Charles Cutler, a physician working for the U.S. Public Health Service, the team set out to study how well penicillin could treat and possibly prevent sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis, gonorrhea, and chancroid. But instead of using voluntary test subjects or ethical methods, they did something far more disturbing. They deliberately infected people without their knowledge or consent. Over 1,300 Guatemalan individuals were used as test subjects. Some were injected directly with bacteria. Others were exposed through arranged sexual contact with sex workers who had been intentionally infected. In many cases, subjects were told nothing. They were simply observed as the diseases took hold. Some participants were given penicillin as treatment, but others were only partially treated or left completely untreated, so researchers could track the course of the illness. At least one death was directly linked to the experiments. The full extent of harm remains unknown because records were incomplete and follow-up was minimal. The study ended in 1948. It was never published. The documents were filed away and the people involved moved on, some to high-ranking positions in public health. The truth didn't surface until 2010, when historian Susan Reverby uncovered archived documents at the University of Pittsburgh. What she found shocked the medical community and the world. President Barack Obama issued a formal apology to Guatemala. A U.S. bioethics commission called the experiments a clear violation of human rights. But legal efforts for justice were blocked. A federal court dismissed the victims' lawsuit in 2012, ruling that the U.S. government couldn't be sued for actions taken outside its borders. No criminal charges were ever filed. No compensation was ever paid. And most of the victims' names are still unknown. Imagine a school for children with intellectual disabilities. Now imagine that same school becoming a laboratory, a place where children were deliberately infected with disease, all under the justification of science. This was Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, New York. At first glance, Willowbrook was supposed to be a place of care for children who needed extra support. But behind its locked doors, something horrifying was happening. Doctors had noticed that hepatitis, a contagious and painful disease that attacks the liver, was spreading rapidly through the facility. Instead of cleaning up the school's poor sanitation or protecting the children, researchers decided to use the outbreak to study the disease more closely. So they did the unthinkable. They deliberately fed the children food and drinks laced with hepatitis, some with infected feces, or extracts from other sick children. Many of the children couldn't even speak. They had no way to refuse. And the only consent often came from desperate parents who were told their children could only be admitted to Willowbrook if they agreed to the study. In one of the richest cities in the world, poor, disabled children were being infected for science, with no benefit to themselves, only to medical journals. Many of these children got sick. Some developed chronic liver disease. One child was described as rocking silently in a corner, yellow from jaundice, crying without words. There was no apology, no rush to stop. This continued for nearly 14 years. And the worst part? The doctors claimed it was ethical. They argued that the children would likely get hepatitis anyway in such unsanitary conditions, so why not study it while they were infected? It took journalist Geraldo Rivera in the 1970s to sneak in with a camera and show the world what was happening behind the walls of Willowbrook. Dirty conditions, children in soiled clothing, staff overwhelmed and untrained, and a system that used society's most vulnerable as test subjects. Eventually, the public outcry forced Willowbrook to shut its doors. But the emotional scars, the medical damage, and the deep betrayal of trust still haunt the families today.